Florida Congressman Charlie Crist is on the political front lines of the U.S. fight against COVID, a battle that's playing out in media across the nation today. Congressman Crist joins us to talk about COVID, his battle for the Florida governorship, and the issue of maintaining safe buildings in the age of climate change. Congressman Crist, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Reena. Great to be with you as always.
And as you know, I'm also from Florida. Love my home state of Florida. But it's kind of hard to watch Florida in the news these days when you talk about COVID.
It's very sad. We are number one in the country in terms of hospitalizations, infections, death. It's awful. And, we have leadership at the top here that seems to be rather uncaring. And it saddens me to say that. But our governor doesn't advocate really wearing masks, getting vaccinated. And as a result, we're where we are.
Why is Florida faring so poorly?
As I alluded to earlier, our leadership could do a lot better in order to protect more Floridians. Governor DeSantis should be advocating wearing masks instead of telling, school districts that they're not allowed to. He should be advocating people getting vaccinated instead of talking about getting the medicine after you're already infected. I'm glad we have that medicine and that it's available. But my dad's a doctor, my sister's a doctor. When it comes to medicine and healthcare, prevention is really the key, whether you're talking about cancer or this virus. And so I don't understand it. It's hurting Florida. And unfortunately and sadly, my 2-month-old niece, Willow, got COVID last week. I mean, it's everywhere. And it doesn't have to be this way. It's tragic.
And she lives in Florida?
St. Petersburg, my hometown, yes.
How is she now?
Our symptoms are not bad yet, knock on wood.
I can't imagine what it's like for a parent of a 2-month-old to find out they have COVID.
Well, that's what my nephew Warren is dealing with. And what happened was their older daughter went to school, no mask requirement in Pinellas County, apparently brought it home, and now her younger sister has it. And it's not their fault, they're the victims.
Yeah.
But I do fault the governor. I think he's complicit by not advocating just two simple things. Get vaccinated, wear a mask. Would keep a lot more people safe.
You mentioned the school districts. I've spoken to several teachers across the state, and one teacher in South Florida told me almost half her class is out with COVID, and it terrifies her to show up to school, a profession she loves, every day. If you were a governor of the state of Florida right now, what would you be doing differently that might turn around the COVID numbers?
Well, instead of discouraging our students in school from wearing masks, I would encourage them to do so. Instead of not talking much about getting the vaccine, I would talk about it every single day. I'm wearing this, GOTV sticker right now. In politics, most people think that means get out the vote. But in this case, it means get out the vaccine, get out the vax. We need to encourage people to do these things. That's what I would be doing. It's what I am doing as a member of Congress. Our governor should be doing it. He's the leader of our state. And it breaks my heart that he's not doing it because it's literally costing lives.
What do you say to school teachers across the state who are very worried about anti-masking policies? What advice do you have for them?
Well, I guess I would encourage them to encourage their local school boards to fight Governor DeSantis on this. I mean, their concerns are real and they're legitimate. And I can't imagine what it's like to go into a classroom with 20 or 30 students, none of which may be masked. And we are number one in COVID in the United States of America. I mean, it's ridiculous. That's absurd.
Why do you think some people look at Florida and they're just like, what is wrong with Florida? Why do you think there's such a distrust in government and people aren't getting vaccinated at a higher rate?
A healthcare crisis is an issue that's not really ideologic. It is an issue of not right versus left, but rather right versus wrong. It is right to listen to physicians and their advice. It is right to listen to healthcare professionals. It is correct to listen and adhere to science. And our governor is doing none of those. It's shocking. I mean, the guy went to Harvard and Yale. You would think that he would take science more seriously. And regrettably, he's not.
I want to ask you about the governor's race. You're ahead in several of the polls down there, and a year is an eternity in politics. Where do you think you might have the upper hand with DeSantis?
With the people. The people of Florida are pretty smart, and they know somebody who's got their back, and they know somebody who does not. And right now, by all appearances and fact, the governor does not have the people's back in Florida. You should be advocating, as I said, for two simple things as it addresses this pandemic: wearing a mask and getting vaccinated. We see neither. He also is advocating a bill that would take away a woman's right to choose. He has just signed a bill recently that would suppress the vote in Florida, make it harder for my 89-year-old father and my 86-year-old mother to exercise mail-in ballots, which are so convenient to so many of our senior citizens. Shoot, I like using a mail-in ballot, especially when you have COVID. It's a safety feature, frankly. I think the people of Florida are just fed up. I think they've seen it. I think they've gotten to know him, and they know that he doesn't support their values, and neither does he have their back.
One thing DeSantis does have that does matter in politics is money. How do you counter the amount of money that DeSantis has been able to rack up in this race?
Just work hard every day. Keep getting our message out. Keep talking to people like you that give the opportunity for others to maybe see what our message is, that it's a hopeful message of doing what's right, of supporting people, supporting public education, a woman's right to choose. These things matter in our lives. And continuing to make the case and having made the case, I think is what's put us where we are in polling right now.
Folks who might not be familiar with your background, you actually served as the state's Republican governor for 8 years. You switched parties. So I want to ask you, as someone who's got the perspective of having one foot in the Republican and then moving over to the Democratic Party, what happened in 2020? How do you explain the 2020 election and how it was such a defeat for Democrats in Florida?
Well, I won my race, and I'm a Democrat, so not all the Republicans did great. And I think there were several contributing factors. COVID certainly was one of them. The Democratic Party really didn't have a door-to-door field program, if you will, and usually has a superb one, out of respect for COVID, frankly, and that probably was the right call. The Republicans, in large measure, ignored that, went ahead, did knock on doors, had a real field program. That helped turn out significantly. So I think that's one of the biggest factors. Hopefully, that will not be the case in October and September of 2022. We'll have the opportunity to safely go out and be able to communicate directly with people as we're accustomed to doing in Florida ordinarily and couldn't really do in 2020.
How do you think Florida politics has changed over the past 5 years? Would you consider Florida to be a Republican state?
No, I think Florida's clearly a purple state. When you look at the fact that almost 200,000 Floridians are registered as Democrats instead of Republicans, that bodes well for that purpleness, if you will. In fact, I know it's the largest swing state in America. The road to the White House goes through Florida, and I am confident that in 2022 we're going to have a great election here. And I pray and hope that we have a new governor because we need one.
You mentioned the road to the White House cuts through Florida. Are you in touch with the White House, President Biden? Are they interested in Florida politics?
Oh, yeah, of course they are. Very much so. This will have a profound impact, this governor's race in 2022, on the president's reelect in 2024. Yeah, I think Republicans, Democrats, and independents are all taking account of this race. The race has already been nationalized by the reports that my opponent, Ron DeSantis, is interested in running for president as a Republican in 2024.
If you had to explain it, what do you think the Florida Democratic Party stands for? How do you define them?
Across the board, I call it a Florida for all. We're one of the most diverse states in America. I think we're the melting pot of the melting pot, which is America. And that's a point of pride, I believe. And we need to embrace it and not try to be divisive and not have, good, healthy conversations instead of arguments.
You mentioned Florida is the melting pot of melting pots. There's no monolith. How do you reach out to all these different people?
You go to them. You go to different neighborhoods throughout the state of Florida. The only way to be able to learn what's on people's minds is to listen to them. My father was a family physician in St. Petersburg for 55 years. He always used to tell my three sisters and me, God gave you two ears and one mouth. Respect his ratio. Listen twice as much as you talk, and you'll be amazed at how much you can learn.
I want to talk a little bit about climate change and building safety. The recent Surfside disaster really laid bare the dangerous vulnerabilities with buildings affected by climate change, particularly in Florida. How do you address building vulnerability due to climate change?
I think post Surfside, what we need to do going forward is have more inspections. I mean, up until about 6 months ago, I lived in a condominium in downtown St. Petersburg, close to the Vinoy. And so you can't help but think about, what does climate change have to do with what happened at Surfside? Did it cause erosion? And we'll know these answers after a lot of study, I'm sure. But inspections, I think, is the smartest thing that we can do now. And I would issue an inspection for every single building in the state, and more frequently.
Do you think we'll get to a point where parts of Florida will just completely be submerged underwater?
I certainly hope not. And in order to address a problem, you have to embrace it and understand that this is real. This exists. We're having, storms that are much stronger. We're having rising sea levels that are much more. I mean, I can see it in St. Petersburg, just driving from my place over to my parents on Snell Isle in Coffee Pot Bayou, which is part of Tampa Bay. It's higher. You can see it. In the past 5 years, I've noticed it. And I'm in South Florida today. You can see it in Miami. So I was the first governor when I was governor previously who held a climate change summit here in Miami, along with Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and Robert Kennedy Jr. It hasn't happened since. I would convene one again if I have the opportunity to serve as governor of Florida once again.
Mhm. There's been some innovation too in Florida. In Miami, they've hired their first heat officer looking at rising climates. What would you do in terms of climate change if you become governor next year?
Well, we need a climate change czar. We really do. And that's been part of what I have offered as part of our platform. I think that, addressing this obvious problem, and you know this as well as I do, Florida probably is the single state that is the most susceptible to rising sea levels. So you got to stay focused on problems like these in order to make a difference about them. That's what it requires. That's what we need to do. That's what I would do differently.
Mm. So when you look at the issues, and you are a big advocate of pressing the flesh and talking to people, what do you think it is that will resonate with Florida voters? What do you think are the top three issues that people want addressed in the state of Florida?
Well, certainly right now it's COVID. It's this pandemic. It's deadly. It's deadly. And my fellow Floridians, you cited the numbers earlier. It's awful. 46,000 that have already passed away, about 4 million that have contracted the disease. So that's issue number one. I hope it's not going forward, but in the present time, it certainly is. Other than that, there's a lot of issues: the economy, education, environment. These are all important issues to all Floridians. Being able to provide for your family, live in a safe neighborhood, get a good education for your children. Basically, we all want the same things. We may have a different way about how we get there, but by and large, that's what people want: a good quality of life, a safe neighborhood to live in, and a bright future for their children. That's what I'm offering.
What do you say to people who look at you and might be uncertain about whether to check the box for you come next year? What could you offer that could be different from Ron DeSantis?
Consistency, continuity. I've always believed what I've believed. I've always believed that it's important to have a government that is transparent, that is honest and open. And you know this as a journalist, we have sunshine laws in Florida that talk about having open government. In order to get any kind of information from this governor, this administration, you literally have to sue to get it. That you need to have somebody who cares about the education of your children, that will support public education. I'm a public school kid myself. I think you are too. And I graduated from Florida State University. We have great universities in Florida. We have great teachers in this state. We have to support them and fund them properly, though. And I know that's important. And the environment. My goodness, it's Florida. Florida's beautiful. People come to visit Florida because of her beauty. And I think it's incredibly important to understand that in Florida, particularly, the environment and the economy are inextricably linked. If we don't protect Florida and the natural beauty that she is, people will stop coming here. And that'll hurt our tourism economy, a number one important part of our economy. All those people who work in restaurants and hotels, they're all served by the tourist industry, which is tied to our beautiful environment. These are the things I cherish. These are the things I think my fellow Floridians care about. That's why I'm running for governor, to have a Florida for all.
Congressman Charlie Crist, grateful for the time. Thank you for joining us on the Recount Daily Pod.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Reena. Great to be with you.